Why did it happen? Well, there is a background. The background is what you began to discuss. For if we go back to the early 1990s, when the current issue begins to develop, the Soviet Union collapsed. President George H.W. Bush, his Secretary of State James Baker, negotiated with Mikhail Gorbachev, Russian leader. In the background were the major German political figures, Hans Genscher, Helmut Kohl. Germany was directly involved in this, and they reached an agreement. The agreement was, it was a firm, explicit agreement. There's been a lot of prevarication about this, so if you want the details, I'd simply suggest looking at the authoritative National Security Archive, which has the original documents easily accessible. The agreement was that Russia would agree to allowing Germany to be unified and to join NATO, which is quite a commitment on the part of Russia if you look back to the history of the 20th century. But they agreed on the condition, the explicit formal condition, that NATO would not expand 1 inch to the east. That commitment was adhered to by President Bush, Bush number one. Mm-hmm. The early years of Clinton followed for a couple of years. He kept to it too. By 1994, he was already talking from two sides of his mouth. I'm now quoting and paraphrasing Ambassador Chas Freeman, one of the most astute, highly respected American diplomats who was directly involved in all of these issues at the time and has been since. As Freeman points out, Clinton started talking in both sides of his mouth. To Russia, he was saying, we'll live up to the agreement. In the United States, domestically, addressing ethnic minorities like the Polish population and with an eye on domestic votes, he was saying, we'll do something to bring frontline states like Poland, Hungary, Slovenia into NATO. He was getting harsh condemnation of this from his close friend, supposedly Boris Yeltsin, who he helped keep in power by direct interference in Russian elections. Yeltsin was strongly objected again in 1996, 1997. Clinton went ahead anyway and broke the agreement to Gorbachev. He invited Poland, Hungary, Slovenia into NATO. The Russians objected, didn't do much about it. 1999, it's a complicated story, can't go into the details, but the Clinton administration decided to bomb Serbia, close US-Russian ally, didn't even bother informing the Russians. There was a pretext. The pretext was to stop Serbian atrocities in Kosovo. There's a slight problem with that pretext. It requires inverting the chronology. The wasn't a pleasant place, but the atrocities were the predicted and anticipated consequence of the bombing. There is no ambiguity about that. There's been a lot of lying about it, inverting the chronology, but it's very firmly established. Well, that was first of all a crime in itself, but also it instigated huge atrocities, exactly as was predicted by the commanding general, Wesley Clark. but also was undertaken in a way to humiliate Russia. The same was true later under Obama with the bombing of Libya and, of course, the Iraq War in 2003. Russia didn't like it, but accepted it. George W. Bush, he just opened the doors, invited practically everybody and all the former Russian satellites into NATO. Also in 2008, W. Bush, the second Bush, invited Ukraine to join NATO. That was vetoed by France and Germany, but it was kept open on the table in deference to the United States. Just about every high-level U.S. diplomat who had any familiarity with the situation, including current head of the CIA and others, warned once again that this is extremely reckless and dangerous. These are Russia's red lines, the heart of their geostrategic concerns. U.S. went ahead. It continued. The U.S. backed, some say, helped instigate the 2014 Maidan uprising, which led immediately to almost direct efforts by what's called NATO, meaning the United States, to help integrate Ukraine more or less within some kind of NATO-style framework, sending weapons, training, and so on.